My name is Stella. I'm 32, and here I am, standing in front of the massive glass doors of the Central Precinct. My heart is pounding so hard it feels like it wants to burst out of my chest and land on the pavement. I rush inside. I'm suffocating, as if I'm actually drowning, not just standing there for the last 5 minutes in the freezing October rain. The air conditioner hisses, blasting me with a freezing draft, but icy sweat trickles down my back, under my sweater, from the panic that's gripping my throat like a tight noose. My fingers clutch the handles of my black leather bag. They've gone white, waxy, and lifeless. It feels like if I unclench my fists, they'll just fall off. This bag isn't an accessory. It's a bomb, a time bomb, planted in my lap by those closest to me. The officer on duty at the counter, a tired man with a cup of coffee in his hand, met my gaze and stood up abruptly. "Miss, are you all right? Do you need help?" His voice cut through the roaring in my ears. I didn't let him get any closer. With one sharp, desperate movement, I threw my bag onto the counter. The wood thudded dully. I stepped back. 3 steps. 4. A safe distance. Don't touch with your bare hands." My voice trembled treacherously, breaking into a whisper. There's something there. Dangerous. You have to be careful." Curiosity warred with caution in his eyes. He slowly pulled on latex gloves and snapped the elastic. His gaze slid over my face, then dropped to the zipper. He pulled it. Silence. He peered inside. At first, he simply leaned forward, then hunched his shoulders as if expecting a blow. And then his face changed. The color drained from his cheeks. His pupils narrowed into 2 black, frightened dots. My right hand instinctively rushed to my holster. I didn't even have time to blink. Now the barrel was pointed not at me, but at my harmless, expensive bag. "Where did this come from?" His shout shattered the silence of the waiting room. "Miss, I'm asking you, where did it come from? Damn it, it's moving!" Hearing those words, I lost all feeling in my legs. They felt weak, treacherously buckled, and I collapsed onto the cold tile floor. My knees hit the tiles painfully, but I felt nothing. Only hot, thick tears that streamed down, washing away mascara, shame, and the last vestiges of hope. They were sitting in my bag. They, the ones I trusted. They tried to send me either to the grave or behind bars this morning. If that happened to you, what would you do? You know, my biggest mistake wasn't trusting a stranger. No, it's that I couldn't say no to my own family when they demanded my help. This hell began 6 months ago. There was a thunderstorm, rain pounding the windows, and the phone was ringing off the hook. Dad. Martin. His voice was strange, something between his usual command and a desperate, animalistic plea. "Stella, open the door. Ruby is coming to you. Right now. She's been evicted." "Dad, I have an office there now. I'm working." "Evicted, daughter. Your sister, because of some misunderstanding with the landlord." He interrupted me, his tone thick with the familiar accusation. "Are you going to let her sleep on the streets while you're warm and comfortable in your big house in Mesa? You do have a heart, right?" An hour later, she stood in the doorway. Ruby, my little sister. Behind her, the rain washed over 3 enormous, unwieldy suitcases. Not a hello, not a sorry, not a hint of embarrassment or gratitude in her eyes. She glided past me in the hallway as if through a vacuum and took in my living room with a long, appraising glance. "God, Stella, this style. It's so retro." "I'd say dated," she said, throwing her wet coat right onto the snow-white sofa. And then, wrinkling her nose, "And it's so drafty here. Do you have the air conditioning set up for permafrost?" I swallowed a lump of irritation. I told myself, just a couple of weeks. Help her out and she'll be back on her feet. Stupid, naive idiot. And then the calls started. From Mom. From Maria. Not once a week, 5 times a day. Not to ask how I was, not to hear my voice. To give instructions about their youngest, precious, crystalline daughter. "Stella, don't pressure her about work. Ruby is fragile. She needs time to recover from the shock. Mom, but she sleeps until 3 in the afternoon. Sleep is part of the healing. Her sigh was long and pained. The world has been cruel to her. Your sister is a fragile flower, and you are strong. You owe it to her to give her this safe haven, without stress, without reminders of money. And I did. I gave her this haven. And they slipped something into my bag that made a seasoned policeman's hand tremble and the knuckles on his pistol turn white. Life with her quickly became a survival test. Ruby trampled on my boundaries with such a shocking lack of respect, it was as if they had never existed. I'd come home from a 10-hour shift at the pharmacy, my legs aching with fatigue, to find my perfect bathroom, my personal sanctuary, turned into a swamp. Towels littered the floor, makeup smeared across the marble countertop, and my expensive night cream, the one I'd paid half my bonus for, scraped clean with a clean finger. My things ceased to be mine. They became ours by default. Her default. I'd find my silk blouses, wrinkled and reeking of cigarette smoke, thrown over the back of a chair. "Oh, sorry, I thought you didn't mind," she'd snap, not even looking up from her phone. Her dirty laundry lay all over the living room, on the back of the couch, on my desk chair, like some strange, silent accusation. She just waited for it to magically become clean and folded, waited for me to do it, her personal, unpaid maid. The breaking point came when I got the bills. Water, electricity. They skyrocketed as if a 24-hour water park and amusement park had opened in the house. I couldn't take it anymore. Carefully, without emotion, I placed the printed sheets on the kitchen island where she ate my yogurts every day. "Ruby, we need to talk about the utilities. The numbers have become astronomical." She didn't even glance at the papers. Her face twisted into a grimace of pure resentment. "What, now? Seriously? Are you going to send me bills when I'm depressed?" And before I could open my mouth, she was already dialing Mom. A second later, my phone rang. My father. His rage burst through the speaker, burning my ear. "Stella, how dare you? She's your blood. We don't share bills with each other like motel guests. Are you stingy with your family's money? You're selfish, understand? Selfish." I stood there, holding the phone to my ear, listening to this 20-minute monologue about family values and unconditional support. My words, my numbers, my reality, everything was drowned in this sea of righteous anger. They gave her carte blanche, complete right to squeeze every drop of juice out of me, and with each call, her smile widened, and I felt the ground shift from under my feet. By the time Ruby had been living with me for 3 months, my once calm, sunny life in Mesa had become like a cheap thriller you couldn't turn off the screen from. But the real horror began when she took aim at my good name. It took me a while to understand why Mrs. Gable, next door, had stopped saying hello to me. Why did the neighbors suddenly fall silent when I went out to get the mail? Until one day I went out early and found Ruby leaning against our fence, having a heartfelt conversation with that same Mrs. Gable. Her voice was sweet, full of sympathy. "She's just at the end of her rope, honestly. Work is killing her. She's taking pills by the handful, poor thing. Mom and I are so worried about her." I froze, as if I'd been doused with ice water. She was whispering to the neighbors that I was crazy, unstable, dangerous. And they believed me. I saw it in their eyes, no longer a friendly greeting, but a wary pity. My invitations to neighborly get-togethers disappeared. The kids on our street stopped chasing the ball if I was in the garden. I became an outcast in my own neighborhood. And all because of my sister's sweet, poisonous whisper. But the worst blow was yet to come. The 4th of July. A barbecue. I'd invited only my oldest friend, Chloe. We sat on the patio laughing, trying to recapture a piece of our old lives. Chloe needed ice. She went into the kitchen and returned a second later, white as a sheet, her eyes filled with pure terror. "Stella, don't drink." She lunged at me and knocked the glass of lemonade from my hand so hard it shattered on the tile. Then she turned sharply to Ruby, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with an innocent expression. "What did you put in there, you bastard? I saw everything. White powder right in her glass." Silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. Ruby didn't blink. She rolled her eyes slowly with exaggerated weariness. "Chloe, calm down, for God's sake. It was stevia. Just stevia." She turned to me and her voice became honeyed and caring. "Sis, you said yourself you wanted to lose a few pounds. I just wanted to help. Is that what everyone thinks of me?" I looked from Chloe's pale, anger-contorted face to Ruby's calm, almost saintly mask. And oh God, I wanted to believe Chloe. But this gaslighting, this daily brainwashing from my parents, "You're overreacting, Ruby's just caring," had taken its toll. Doubt settled in. What if Chloe was wrong? What if I really was losing my temper? But after that day, something inexplicable began to happen to me. I began to be overcome by a monstrous, animal-like fatigue. I would fall asleep in the middle of the day sitting at the computer, and one day I just passed out and came to, lying on the cold living room floor. The clock showed 3 hours had passed. 3 hours of my life ground to dust. I remembered absolutely nothing, only a cottony emptiness in my head and a chilling fear. I began to fear my own home, my own glass of water, my own sanity. And they, Mom and Dad, kept calling and asking if I was taking good care of poor Ruby. The world turned upside down, and I no longer understood what was true and what was a nightmare in which I was destined to burn alive. Everything became even darker when reality began to disappear from my life, literally. First, the bills disappeared from my wallet. Then came Grandma's sapphire earrings, the one valuable thing I treasured. My heart pounding in my throat, I approached Ruby. "Have you seen my earrings? And $300 are missing from my wallet." She didn't even bat an eyelid. She picked up an apple from the plate and crunched loudly. "Again? Stella." Her voice was sweet as syrup and poisonous as cyanide. "You probably misplaced them again in one of your fits. Remember how you found the TV remote in the freezer a week ago?" The next day, my parents rushed in, their faces serious and concerned. "Daughter, we'll help you find everything, don't worry." And they found it. Mom, with a theatrical sigh of relief, pulled the earrings out of the laundry basket. Dad discovered some folded bills in a bag of frozen peas. "See?" Mom looked at me, not with a mother's gaze, but with the stern gaze of a nurse in a mental hospital. "Everything's still there. You just forget, Stella. Ruby says you even forget to lock the door at night and talk to yourself. I'm scared for you. Go to the doctor, please. Don't let yourself end up like your Aunt Margaret, alone in a padded room." The world rocked. I couldn't even trust my own eyes anymore. Maybe I really was going crazy. And then the heat came. That Arizona heat wave, scorching hot. 2 weeks before the day that brought me to the police station, Ruby had gone out to brunch with her friends in the morning. The house was finally quiet. I decided to mop the floors, to regain at least the illusion of control. I walked into her room, my former bedroom cum office. I reached for the vacuum cleaner in the closet, tripped over the edge of the carpet, and almost fell face first onto the bed. Bracing my hands on the frame to steady myself, I peered underneath. And there it was. A large cardboard box, stuffed into the farthest corner, and it was perfectly sealed, layer after layer of strong brown tape, neatly, meticulously. It was so unlike the sloppy, scatter things around Ruby that something inside me snapped, a cold, sharp snap of instinct. I pulled the box out. My hands were shaking. The tape peeled off with a sickening crack. And when I opened the doors, my breath caught. Chaos. An orderly, chilling chaos of papers. On top, stacks of some kind of receipts. I picked up the first one. Urgent notice. Loan overdue. The amount was $25,000. Next, another. Casinos. Bookmakers. Private loan sharks from Phoenix. I frantically flipped through the pages, adding up the numbers in my head. $150,000? My God, a debt that could bury anyone. Beneath them were printouts, screenshots of correspondence. I recognized the font of Mom's messages. And I read them, word by word, phrase by phrase. My blood literally froze in my veins, turning into an icy slurry. Mom, don't rush things. Her condition is deteriorating according to plan. Watch the dosage. Ruby, what about the house? Are you sure you'll have time to sell it before the banks start collecting debts? Dad, the market in Mesa is at its peak. After her hospitalization/death, we'll sell it in 3 months. We'll cover your debts, and it'll be enough for our pension. The main thing is to make it look like an accident or natural death. Crazy people don't live long. My stomach clenched. I almost fell over. But underneath that stack lay the last, most horrific document. An insurance policy. In my name. Issued a month ago, without my knowledge, signature, or participation. Amount $1 million. Beneficiaries: Ruby Martin, Maria, and Martin Reynolds, my parents. And at the bottom, circled in bold yellow marker, section 4.B. The payout increases to $2 million, $2 million, in the event of the insured's death as a result of an accident, car accident, poisoning, fall. I sat on the floor in her room, holding these papers in my numb hands. My ears were ringing. They weren't just using me. They weren't just lying about me. They calculated my death, invested in it, expected dividends. My family, my blood, they bet on my death, and they did everything to make sure their bet came true. At the very bottom of the box lay a note, just a piece of squared paper torn from a notebook, but I'd recognize the handwriting anywhere. Sharp, nervous, with Ruby's signature scribbles. I picked it up, and the letters swam before my eyes. It wasn't a plan. It was a checklist, a summary of her monstrous research. Methods: rattlesnake venom. Natural toxin, difficult to trace, can be chalked up to an accidental bite during a hike. Check routes in South Mountain. Next Tuesday is the perfect time. Tuesday. Today was Friday. That meant I only had 3 days. 3 days until my accidental venomous snake bite. And yet it was for next Tuesday that she so solicitously scheduled me with the new best neurologist in the state, ostensibly to evaluate my shaky memory. The trap slammed shut with chilling precision. I vomited, right there on the carpet in her room. From horror, from betrayal, from the realization that you were just a line on someone else's deadly schedule. But then clarity came, icy, cutting, like a shard of glass. Go for it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone, but I forced myself to. I photographed every piece of paper, every threat from the loan sharks, every brutal chat with my parents, that damned insurance policy, and the note, especially the note. I uploaded everything to a cloud storage shared only by me and my lawyer, with whom I'd consulted about the will a year ago. Let this be my posthumous confession should anything go wrong. Then, with the surgical precision of desperation, I repacked the box. Every layer of tape lay exactly as it had been. I slid it under the bed, the exact centimeter I'd started with. I erased the marks and waited. Waited for Tuesday. The air in the kitchen that Tuesday morning was thick and sweet like syrup. It smelled of coffee and death. I woke up feeling like my stomach was one solid ice ball. But I got up, got dressed. I put on a mask of normalcy like a bulletproof vest. Any crack, any tremor in my voice, and she'd suspect. Ruby was already in the kitchen. That in itself was a red flag the size of a banner. She, the queen of late risers, stood at the stove with a beaming plastic smile. "Good morning, little sister. Did you sleep well? Here, drink this." She thrust a mug of steaming black coffee into my hands. "This will perk you up before the appointment. You look pale." Her eyes, empty and shiny like a doll's, never left me. I accepted the mug. I thanked her, and just as she turned to the cabinet for the special sugar, I emptied the coffee into the sink with one movement. The liquid fizzed down the drain. I quickly rinsed the mug and put it in the dishwasher. Empty. "Oh, did you drink it all? Well done," her voice came from behind me. She handed me my purse. "Make sure you're not late. That doctor is a luminary. And be careful driving. You seem sleepy today. I'm really worried." Her worried rang with such genuine, sweet concern that I almost threw up again. I muttered something and retreated into the living room, pretending to get ready. And here it was, the decisive moment. I sat down at the vanity to apply foundation, to mask not insomnia, but panic. In the mirror, I saw the reflection of the sofa and her. She moved silently, like a shadow. She crept toward my open black bag, which I'd deliberately left in plain sight. My heart pounded, threatening to jump out. I saw her hand, quick and deft, dart into the main compartment. A small black bundle of thick fabric flashed, and the metal of a syringe gleamed. But that wasn't the scariest part. When she removed her hand, the bundle moved. On its own, independently. There was something alive in there, something that was supposed to kill me on the way to the best doctor in the state. In that moment, all doubts evaporated. This wasn't paranoia. This was a cold, calculating conspiracy, and its culmination was unfolding before my eyes. I slowly, with incredible willpower, applied lipstick. My hands didn't shake. I stood up and walked to the couch. To her. Our eyes met. "Well, I'm off," I said, and my voice sounded surprisingly calm, almost detached. I leaned over and took my bag, not under my arm as usual, but by the long straps, holding it at a respectful distance from my body, like a container of radioactive waste. "See you tonight," I smiled coldly, looking straight into her empty, jubilant eyes. This wasn't goodbye. This was her final warning. This was the last time she saw me as a victim. Now, it was my turn. I walked out to the car. My legs buckled beneath me as if they were made of lead. I fell into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and the world outside seemed to go silent. My fingers gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles protruding like white lumps. The key turned in the lock, the engine roared, and that was the sound of my own shattered silence. Ruby waited for me to turn left, toward the clinic, toward my beautiful, quiet death under the care of the best doctor. Instead, I floored the gas pedal and swerved right, toward the city center, toward the police station. Every mile that flashed past the window was a breath of air. Every turn was like cutting a noose from my neck. I wasn't driving, I was running to finally end this nightmare. 15 minutes later, I was sitting in the interrogation room. My mind refused to comprehend the speed with which my life had transformed from morning preparations into a criminal investigation. I watched as specialists in protective suits, looking like astronauts, worked on my purse behind the thick glass. Their movements were slow, precise, almost ritualistic. The officer, a young man with a serious face, came out to me, removing his helmet. "It's a Texas diamondback rattlesnake, a western diamondback. Highly venomous, ma'am." His voice was even, but his eyes betrayed shock. And it was pumped with stimulants to make it hyper-aggressive. And this syringe, he nodded toward the clear evidence bag, it contains a lethal dose of fentanyl, enough that, well, even if the snake hadn't managed it, you would have had a stroke from it. I didn't vomit. I didn't scream. I just sat, and the silence inside me became deafening. Detective Vance sat down across from me. His tired eyes seemed to see everything. I placed the small silver flash drive between us on the cold metal table. It lay there like a shell casing. "It's all here," my voice sounded hoarse. I took a sip of ice water from a paper cup. Ruby's debts, my parents' correspondence, plans to sell my house, and an audio recording from this morning. They thought I was sleeping. I watched him insert the flash drive into the laptop. His fingers ran across the touchpad. His face was the stony mask of a professional. But the further he scrolled, the more that mask cracked. His brows drew together, his lips pressed into a thin white line. He saw something he probably found hard to believe: how a human life had been reduced to numbers on a payroll and lines on an insurance policy. Finally, he slammed his palm down on the table with a dull thud. The sound was as sharp as a gunshot. "This isn't a family squabble, Ms. Reynolds." His voice became low and hard. "This is premeditated, self-serving murder. Conspiracy. They wanted your money. All of it. And now. We're acting right now." And at that very moment, as if on cue, my phone rang. On the screen, a group video call. Icons. Mom, Dad, Ruby. They were calling to check. Hear either my death rattles or the rumble of silence. Detective Vance met my gaze. He nodded, a sharp, clear gesture. "Answer." Put me on speaker. The world narrowed to the vibrating phone in my trembling hand. They were waiting for confirmation of my death. I pressed the button. "Stella," my father's voice boomed over the line. "No hello, no how were you, just rush, nervousness. Are you at the doctor's office yet?" There was no concern in his tone, only the impatience of an accomplice awaiting a signal. Yes, almost," I managed, trying to keep my voice weak, sleepy. "Excellent. Listen carefully," he spoke quickly, abruptly. "You need to open your bag right now. Mom put your medical records in there for the doctor. They're in the main office. Get them out. Now don't delay." A deathly silence fell over the room. Detective Vance froze, his gaze turning icy. This was it. Irrefutable proof. They knew exactly what was in the bag, and they were ordering me to stick my hand in there, right into the mouth of what was supposed to kill me. Their own words, greedy and impatient, were the nail that slammed the lid of their coffin shut forever. Detective Vance looked at me, not with sympathy, but with that understanding that freezes you inside. He saw in their voices what I saw. I had ceased to be human. I had become a problem, a threat, a failed target, who had now turned their own weapons against them. With one sharp gesture, he signaled for the recording to end. Then he grabbed the radio. His voice, low and cutting, filled the room. "All teams, the warrant has been activated. The target was 42 Vine Street. Surround. No one should leave. Awaiting tactical teams. There's reason to believe the suspects may destroy evidence." It was the end. Not mine. Theirs. That same cloudy afternoon, police sirens shattered the silence of my once quiet neighborhood. Like a swarm of steelhead, a dozen cars with blue lights flashing surrounded my house. I sat in the back seat of an unidentified police car across the street. Through the tinted glass, the world seemed blue, distorted, alien. I watched as neighbors poured out onto their lawns. The same faces that had looked at me with pity and fear were now contorted with shock and greedy curiosity. They watched as heavily armored officers, armed to the teeth, battered my front door down with a battering ram. The clanking sound of the impact carried even through the glass. The ultimate irony: those who thought I was crazy were now watching as the real crazy was dragged into the light of day. The police burst in, guns drawn, shouting, "Hands up!" And I held my breath, imagining the scene they saw. They found them in the living room. My sweet family. Ruby, Mom, and Dad, sitting on that same beige sofa, cups of herbal tea in their hands, in relaxed, victorious poses. They were waiting for the call of my death. But instead, they got the SWAT team. Their faces in that moment, I would have given anything to see their faces. They should have frozen, confusion, and then the chilling realization: failure. Complete, deafening failure. Mom dropped the cup. The porcelain shattered on the parquet floor with a thin, sad clink, the sound of their predatory idol shattering. And then Ruby, oh Ruby, she didn't disappoint. She threw herself onto the Persian rug with a scream that could probably be heard on the next street. "It's her! It's all Stella!" Her shriek was piercing, hysterical. "She hates me. She hired these actors. She wants to break me. She's crazy, you understand? Crazy." She convulsed, kicking her legs, wringing her hands. This was her signature role, the innocent victim of a treacherous, envious sister. Only this time, the audience wasn't our blind parents, but stone-faced people in bulletproof vests. My father jumped up, his face flushed with righteous anger. He shielded Ruby with his body, jabbing a trembling finger straight into Detective Vance's face. "How dare you? You have no right! Stella is crazy. She made this all up out of jealousy. Let my daughter go immediately. You're destroying our family." But his words, those pathetic, sickeningly familiar words, hung in the air and fell dead. The officers didn't even glance at him. They worked, coldly, methodically, like clockwork. One of them emerged from Ruby's bedroom. In his hands was a black, ventilated plastic box, a shipping container, for reptiles. In his other hand, he held a crumpled receipt, which, as it turned out, had been found right in her trash can. Exoterrarium stimulants, paid in cash. Another officer sat down at her laptop, still lying on the coffee table. He clicked the mouse. The screen came to life. The browser was open. The search bar glowed with ominous text. How to dissolve a human body with common household chemicals. The silence in the room must have been deafening. Evidence lay scattered around like trash. They were so confident of their impunity, so contemptuous of me, that they didn't even bother to cover their tracks. They thought it was a one-sided game, that I was just a deaf, meek target. They were wrong. The click was the moment her performance ended. The moment the cold steel of the handcuffs snapped onto her slender wrists, all the sobs stopped, as if someone had turned off the sound, and the mask fell from her face. It fell instantly, revealing something sharp, predatory, and full of hatred. She looked not at the police officers, not at me through the car window. She looked at our parents, and in her gaze there was nothing but icy, animalistic accusation. She understood. She understood that she was trapped, and if she was going to drown, she was going to drown with everyone else. "It's you!" Her scream cut through the air as the officers held her arms. She lunged toward her mother like an enraged cat. "You were the one who told me we'd live like royalty if she died. You! Your idea! You gave me the number of that snake-wielding freak. Don't you dare remain silent now. Don't you dare blame it all on me." My parents stood there thunderstruck. Their faces, confused and angry just a second ago, were now frozen. They looked at their creation, their golden child, and saw it turn back at them, snarling. The betrayal in their eyes was physical, almost tangible. They had raised this monster, nurtured its greed, and now it was devouring them, lest it choke itself to death. Without changing his expression, Detective Vance gave the order, "Separate them, now." And I watched as my family, that toxic, intertwined trinity, was dragged into different corners. Mom, Dad, Ruby, each in handcuffs, each in a separate patrol car. I thought I'd feel triumph, a sweet, chilling triumph. But inside there was only a vast, soundless emptiness, as if something vital had been cut out, leaving only a cold, clean vacuum. The people who should have been my fortress turned out to be predators, and to survive, I had to lock them in cages. 2 months later. The silence in the Arizona Supreme Court was heavy as lead. The rattlesnake in the purse case had thundered across the states, but here, in this room, with its polished wood, only a dead judicial silence reigned. My evidence, those very same photographs, correspondence, audio recordings, lay on the jury table like a neatly assembled puzzle of absolute evil. They couldn't resist it, and my loving family helped. During questioning, trying to save their own skins, they drowned each other in a torrent of mutual accusations. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Exactly 3. When they returned, their faces were unreadable. But the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. I sat in the public gallery. Not in the victim's seat. I couldn't be that close to them. I watched, with a cold, grim satisfaction that held not a shred of joy. The judge read Ruby's sentence: 20 years in a maximum security prison, 15 without parole. She didn't scream. She didn't faint. She simply hung her head. She stared blankly at the polished parquet floor as the bailiffs shackled her. Her new life began behind bars, and it ended there too. My parents were lucky. Age, previously clean records. They avoided long years in prison. But the court was merciless in another way: financial retribution. They were convicted of conspiracy and complicity in attempted murder. The judge confiscated their assets, every last cent, to cover my legal costs and pay compensation. Their cozy home in the suburbs, their cars, their precious retirement savings, for which they were willing to kill me, all of it evaporated. They were evicted. They ended up in a dilapidated public housing complex on the very outskirts of town, where the paint is peeling and the air conditioning, if there is one, barely moves the hot, stale air. Their golden pensions, their quiet old age and comfort, they crumbled to dust. They got their prison, without bars, but with the same lifelong sentence of poverty and shame. It didn't take them long to realize what their lives had become. Less than a week after the verdict, they found me. I was renting a temporary apartment, the address of which I supposedly kept secret, but they came, without calling, without warning. First, a persistent, then furious knock on the door. A fist on wood. A familiar, chilling sound. "Stella, open up! It's your parents!" My father's voice, once full of authority, was now filled with a pitiful, animalistic plea. "We're family! You don't abandon family!" I stood on the other side, pressing my palm to the cold surface, feeling every blow in my temples. "Daughter, please!" My mother was sobbing now. Her voice, always so measured and convincing, was now hysterical. "We're destitute. We have no food. We just wanted to help Ruby. She's our baby. We're confused. You have to understand." Listening to it was pathetic. Humiliatingly pathetic. They were using the same levers, the same strings they'd been playing for years. Family, must, baby. But now those words rang hollow, like a cracked bell. Not a single twitch inside me, not a spark of guilt, not a shadow of doubt. Only cold, silent, absolute, like the depths of space. I didn't open the door. I didn't say a word. I retreated to the living room, picked up the phone, and dialed my lawyer. "They're here," I said evenly. "Give them the order." 20 minutes later, the police arrived. I watched from the second-story window as 2 officers approached my parents, who were still sitting on the steps, dejected and broken. I didn't hear the words, but I saw my father's head rise, my mother's face in her hands. They were handed a paper, a permanent restraining order, a card banishing them from my life. The officer pointed to the patrol car. They were led away. The last thing I saw was my father's back, hunched and suddenly aged. It was the last time I saw the people who gave me life. And I felt nothing. Nothing but a quiet, final click. Blood ties didn't snap in court. They snapped the moment they sat at the kitchen table and calculated that my life was worth less than the deaths of their baby. The following week, I sold the house in Mesa. Every room in it screamed. The living room, her criticism. The kitchen, poisoned coffee. The bedroom, the rustle of ominous papers under the bed. I couldn't breathe that air. My father, in his monstrous cynicism, was right. The real estate market was at its peak. I sold it for a huge profit. That money wasn't an inheritance, but a ransom. The price of freedom. I packed 2 suitcases with the bare essentials and left. Away from the scorching, stifling desert heat. Across the country. Now I live in a quiet coastal town. Here the air smells of salt and freshness. It doesn't oppress, it cleanses. There are no shadows in the corners, no knocks on the door after midnight. Here, silence isn't a premonition of disaster, but a gift. I'm finally free. Free from the burden of being a donor, an ATM, a sacrificial lamb for my own family, free to live for myself. And I realized a terrible and simple truth. Sometimes the most dangerous predators don't hide in dark alleys. They sit at the same table with you. They smile, and they say, "We love you," with a knife behind their back. My experience is a scar, but also a shield. It taught me blood relationship is not an indulgence for cruelty. There's no obligation to endure poison for the sake of the phantom family well-being. If family ties have become a noose, you have every right, no, you must cut them. Your safety, your mental well-being, this is the only and absolute priority. Trust, once shattered, can never be mended. I want to say thank you to everyone who was with me in spirit on this terrible journey to justice and liberation. Your support, even invisible, was a beacon. And now I want to ask you, because it's important to me, what do you think? Was I too cruel to my parents? Or did they, by plotting my death for money, choose their own fate and deserve to lose everything? Please share your honest opinion in the comments. Every thought you share is like a breath of that fresh sea air. Thank you for listening to my story.